Diane Stratton had exactly 47 minutes to make her flight. She was standing at a fuel pump at some truck stop in rural Wyoming, watching the numbers tick up on the diesel display. Her mind was racing, calculating every single second. Okay, fill the tank. That's 3 minutes. Bathroom break, 2 minutes. A 15-minute drive to the airport, 10 minutes to return the rental car. And maybe, just maybe, 20 minutes to get through security. If the TSA pre-check line wasn't a total disaster, it was tight, but she was convinced it was doable. She'd make that 6:15 p.m. flight to Denver, catch her connection to New York, and be home in her own bed by midnight. This was just the end of another routine trip, another successful site visit completed, another underperforming facility identified for closure, another line item on the quarterly earnings report that would make the board of directors very, very happy. The fuel pump clicked off, jolting her back to the present. Diane replaced the nozzle and headed inside the grimy little building to pay. The truck stop was exactly what you'd picture. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and old, burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on everything. A few truckers were hunched over a small diner counter, and some forgotten country song was playing from a radio somewhere. This place just screamed unclean. It made her skin crawl, and all she could think about was taking a long, hot shower. She walked up to the register where a tired-looking woman, probably in her 50s, was working. "Pump 4, Diane said, her voice sharp and efficient, "and I need a receipt." The woman offered a weary smile. "Sure thing, hun. That'll be $87.34. Diane handed over her corporate card without even looking at the cashier. Her mind was already on the plane, already in that Monday morning meeting. She was mentally reviewing the report she'd have to present. The Jackson facility was just hemorrhaging money. The solution was simple. Clean. Close it. Relocate operations to the Texas plant. Eliminate 240 jobs. The math was simple. It was just business. "Ma'am." A voice broke through her thoughts. Diane looked up, annoyed by the interruption. An old man stood beside her. He had to be in his 70s, with a face weathered by sun and wind. He wore a worn-out denim jacket and a classic trucker's cap, looking like a living stereotype of a long-haul driver. "Yes," she asked, not bothering to hide her impatience. "Couldn't help but notice your rental plates," he said, his voice slow and gravelly. "You heading to the airport?" Diane's jaw tightened. "That's not really your concern." She took her credit card back from the cashier, ready to leave. "I just wanted to warn you," the old man continued, undeterred. "There's a storm coming. A big one. The Weather Service issued a blizzard warning about 20 minutes ago. They're saying whiteout conditions by 7 o'clock. You might want to reconsider driving." Diane glanced dismissively toward the windows. It was overcast, sure, but there wasn't a single snowflake in sight. "It looks fine," she stated flatly. The old man shook his head slowly. "It looks fine now, but ma'am, I've been driving these roads for 40 years. When they issue a blizzard warning in December in Wyoming, you listen. That storm's gonna hit hard and fast. You should stay here. Wait it out." The idea was ridiculous. "I have a flight to catch," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I don't have time to wait out a storm that might not even happen." "Oh, it's gonna happen," he insisted. "I've seen this before." Dan cut him off. "Thank you for your concern, but I can handle it." Her tone was ice, making it crystal clear that this conversation was over. She grabbed her receipt and marched toward the door. As she reached for the handle, the old trucker called after her. "Ma'am, please. This isn't about toughing it out. This is dangerous. People die on this road when these storms hit." Diane spun around, her face a mask of irritation. Who was this man to tell her what to do? "I appreciate the warning," she said, her voice tight, "but I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions. I've been driving for 25 years without any input from strangers at truck stops." For a moment, she saw something flicker across his weathered face. It might have been concern, or maybe just resignation, like he'd had this exact conversation 100 times before. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a small business card, and held it out to her. "At least take this. If you get in trouble, call. I'll be heading that direction in about an hour. Once I get some coffee in me. Name's Earl. Earl Patterson. Diane stared at the card. Earl Patterson, independent hauler. For a split second, she considered taking it, just to make him go away. But his presumption, his assumption that she, a successful corporate executive, would need help from some old trucker, was infuriating. It was as if he believed she couldn't handle a little bad weather, while he, in his infinite wisdom, could. I won't need it, she said, her voice cold and final. But thank you. She left the card hanging in his outstretched hand and pushed the door open, walking out into the gray afternoon. As the door swung shut behind her, she faintly heard the cashier's quiet voice say, "She's gonna regret that." And then Earl's low reply, "I know, they always do." The words barely registered. She got into her rental, turned the key, and pulled out onto the highway. Her mind already back on that flight, on that report on the simple math of her successful life. She was Diane Stratton. She didn't make mistakes, and she certainly didn't need help from anyone. The empty road stretched out before her, and she pressed her foot on the accelerator, eager to leave this place and everyone in it far behind. The sky was getting darker, but she paid it no mind. It was just weather, and she could handle it. I won't need it, but thank you. She left the card in his outstretched hand and walked out. Behind her, she heard the cashier say quietly, "She's gonna regret that." And Earl's response, "I know, they always do." Diane climbed into a rented Lexus SUV and pulled back onto Highway 287. Airport was 40 miles north, 40 miles of empty Wyoming highway that she could cover in 35 minutes, if she drove efficiently. She turned up the heat, set her GPS, and accelerated. The sky was gray but stable. No snow. The trucker was probably just being overcautious. That's what happens when you get old. You see danger everywhere. You lose your edge. Diane had never lost her edge. That's how she'd made senior vice president by 42. By being decisive, by not letting fear or what-ifs slow her down, by trusting her own judgment over the opinions of people who didn't have her education or experience. A trucker worried about the weather, please. She'd driven in worse. There was that snowstorm in Chicago back in 2019, the ice storm in Boston in 2021. She'd handled both of them without any incident at all. Wyoming would be no different. This was just another obstacle to overcome. Her phone rang. It was Jennifer, her assistant. "Diane, just confirming you're on schedule for the 6:15 flight?" "Yes. About 40 minutes out from the airport, maybe less." "Good, because the board moved tomorrow's meeting up to 8 a.m. They want the Jackson report first thing." "Are you prepared?" "Completely prepared," Diane said, her voice sharp and confident. "The facility is a disaster, outdated equipment, inefficient workflows, union resistance to modernization. Closure is the only logical option. I have all the data to support the recommendation. What about the employees? 240 jobs is significant. Severance packages are generous," Diane countered. "And frankly, Jennifer, most of those jobs are redundant anyway. Automation at the Texas facility will handle the same output with 1/3 the workforce. This is about efficiency, not sentiment." "Understood. Safe flight." Diane hung up the phone and noticed the first snowflakes hitting her windshield. They were light, scattered, nothing concerning. She turned on the wipers to their lowest setting. Her GPS showed 30 miles to the airport. 35 minutes. She'd make it easily, with time to spare. 20 minutes later, the snow was heavier. Not alarming, but steady. The kind of snow that reduces visibility a bit but is totally manageable if you just slow down and pay attention. Diane reduced her speed from 70 to 60. She was still making good time. The highway was eerily empty. She'd passed a few trucks heading in the opposite direction, but there was nothing on her side of the road. It was just her, the endless Wyoming plains, and an increasingly gray sky. The snow intensified. The flakes were bigger now, wetter. Diane turned the wipers to a faster setting. Her phone's GPS lost its signal knots, unusual in these rural areas, but the car's built-in navigation still worked. 20 miles to the airport. She could almost smell the jet fuel. The wind picked up, howling now. Diane felt the big SUV shift slightly as powerful gusts hit it from the side. She gripped the steering wheel tighter. Still manageable. It's just weather. Nothing she couldn't handle. She'd proven that time and time again. Then, almost instantly, the snow became a solid wall. One moment, Diane could see the road stretching out before her. The next, she was driving completely blind in a full-on whiteout. She slammed on the brakes far too hard. The SUV's tires lost their grip, and it skidded sideways on the slick pavement. Her heart pounded in her chest. She corrected, yanking the wheel. Feeling the anti-lock brakes pulse under her foot, she regained control, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. She slowed to 30 miles per hour, then 20. She couldn't see the road markings, couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. The snow was so thick and dense, it was like driving through a solid white curtain. "Okay," she muttered to herself, her voice trembling slightly. "This is fine. Just slow down. Follow the road. You're fine." But she couldn't see the road. She was guessing where it was, based on memory and sheer instinct. The wind howled like a predator, and the SUV rocked violently with each gust. Diane's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel, her knuckles aching. The phone was dead. No signal. The car's GPS still painted a thin blue line on the screen, a ghost of a route, but Diane had no clue if she was actually on the highway anymore. All she could see was white, a blank, terrifying canvas, with no reference points, no landmarks, nothing. Suddenly, a dark shape loomed ahead. Diane slammed on the brakes. The big SUV skidded, its back end swinging out, sliding sideways until it came to a jarring halt, just inches from... what? A snowbank? A highway barrier? She couldn't tell. She threw the car into park, her hands trembling so badly she could barely grip the gearshift. Her breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. This was bad. This was actually seriously bad. The old trucker at the gas station. He'd been right. The thought hit her with a mix of ice-cold fear and hot, stupid anger. She'd ignored a direct warning. She'd made an arrogant, foolish decision. And now, here she was, stranded in a blizzard in the middle of rural Wyoming, with no cell service and no earthly idea where she was. "Okay. Think." She whispered the words aloud, her voice sounding small against the scream of the wind. "What do you do in this situation? Stay with the car." That was the first rule. Everyone knew that. You never, ever try to walk in a blizzard. You stay with the car, run the engine for heat, and wait for help. Diane glanced at the fuel gauge. 3/4 full. Good. That was enough to run the heater for hours, if she had to. She flicked on her hazard lights, their rhythmic blinking immediately swallowed by the swirling snow. She kept the engine running and settled back in her seat to wait. The wind howled like a predator, a relentless, shrieking sound that seemed to want to tear the car apart. Snow began to pile against the windows, slowly, then all at once, turning the glass opaque. The world outside was a violent, chaotic swirl of white, and Diane Stratton, senior vice president, a woman who had built her entire career on never admitting a mistake, had to finally face the hard, cold fact that she had made a catastrophic error in judgment, all because she was too proud, too arrogant, to listen to an old trucker who was just trying to help her. The first hour wasn't so bad. She ran the heat in short bursts to conserve fuel, Checked her phone every 2 minutes like a ritual signal. No signal. No signand. Fought to keep the rising tide of panic at bay. Someone would find her. It was a highway, after all. The highway patrol. A snowplow. Another driver brave or stupid enough to be out in this. Someone. But the blizzard showed no sign of letting up. If anything, it was getting worse. The wind was so strong now it was physically shaking the heavy SUV. The snow had completely covered the windshield. Diane felt like she was inside a white cocoon, totally sealed off from the rest of the world. She tried to peer out the driver's side window, but it was no use. The snow was already piled too high. She'd have to open the door to see anything, and that meant letting the brutal, cold, and driving snow inside. So she sat, and she waited, and she tried very, very hard not to panic. Her phone showed 74% battery, no service. But at least she could check the time, 6:37 p.m. She'd officially missed her flight. Her assistant, Jennifer, would be wondering what happened. The big board meeting tomorrow in New York would have to be rescheduled. Thinking about these practical problems was a shield, a way to keep from thinking about the much bigger, much scarier question. What if no one finds me? At 7:15 p.m., the engine sputtered, just a slight cough. But Diane's heart stopped dead in her chest. She stared at the fuel gauge. It was still showing 3/4 full. What was happening? Why was the engine sputtering? And then a memory surfaced from a long-ago driver's ed class. Exhaust. In heavy, deep snow, the tailpipe can get blocked. And if it does, carbon monoxide, the silent killer, can build up inside the car. She had to clear the exhaust. Right. Now, taking a deep breath, Diane pushed open the driver's door. The wind hit her like a punch to the chest. Snow and freezing air rushed into the warm cabin. She couldn't see a thing. The world was just a white, howling vortex. She climbed out, and her dress shoes immediately sank into snow up to her knees. The cold was a physical shock, stealing her breath and making her gasp. She dressed for a flight and a meeting, not a blizzard, a light jacket over a business casual. It was completely, dangerously inadequate. She fought her way to the back of the SUV, the wind shoving her sideways, the snow blinding her. She had to find the tailpipe by feel. It was completely packed solid with heavy, wet snow. Diane started digging it out with her bare hands. She hadn't even thought to grab her gloves. The snow burned her skin, a paradoxical searing cold, and her fingers went numb within seconds. But she clawed at it frantically until she'd cleared a small opening, enough for the exhaust to escape. Getting back to the driver's door, just a few feet away, was even harder. The wind had intensified, and she couldn't see the car at all. She was literally 3 feet away and couldn't see it. Panic clawed at her throat. She stretched out her numb hands, feeling her way along the side of the vehicle, her heart pounding, until her fingers found the edge of the door, still hanging open. She scrambled back inside, her body shaking uncontrollably. Was it from the cold, the fear, or both? She didn't know. She slammed the door shut and cranked the heat to maximum. She rubbed her hands together, wincing as the feeling started to return in a wave of pins and needles. They were bright, angry red. Her teeth were chattering so hard her jaw ached. The engine was running smoothly now that the exhaust was clear. But as the warmth slowly seeped back into her body, a terrible truth dawned on her. She would have to keep checking the tailpipe every hour, maybe every half hour, depending on how fast the snow was falling. And each time, she would have to go back out into that frozen, screaming hell. She wouldn't survive the night. Not like this. Not in these clothes. Desperate, Diane looked in the back seat for anything that could help. Her laptop bag, her luggage, a small roller bag packed for a quick overnight trip, full of silk blouses and skirts. Nothing for outdoor survival. Then she saw it. A small, flimsy rental car emergency kit. Inside was a tiny first aid kit, a flashlight, and a cheap, thin blanket that looked like it came from an airline. That was it. That was all she had between her and the blizzard. She wrapped the pathetic little blanket around her shoulders and fought back the tears that were threatening to spill. This is how people die she thought. Making one stupid mistake, her phone showed 68% battery. Still no signal. The time was 7:43 p.m. How long until someone even realized she was missing? Jennifer would notice when she didn't get off the plane in New York. But that wouldn't be until after midnight. And what would Jennifer do? Call the airline, the rental car company. It would be hours, maybe the entire night, before anyone started actively looking for her on a remote stretch of highway in Wyoming. And by then, it might be too late. The tiny, fragile bubble of the car was her whole world now. And outside, the storm was only getting stronger. At 8:30 p.m., Diane Stratton had to clear the exhaust pipe again. This time was worse. The snow was deeper, the wind stronger. She was frozen to death in a rental car on a Wyoming highway because she'd have been too arrogant to listen to a warning. The irony was bitter. Diane, who'd spent her career telling people their concerns were unfounded, their fears exaggerated, their caution unnecessary, was going to die because she couldn't admit someone else might know better. Losing her way back to the driver's door, she panicked, turning in circles, unable to see the car right next to her. She only found it by falling into it, her hands smacking against the cold side panel. When she climbed back inside, she was crying. Her hands were beyond numb, completely white, maybe frostbitten. Her legs were soaked. She was shaking so hard she could barely hold the steering wheel. She couldn't do this again, couldn't keep going out there. But if she didn't, she'd die from carbon monoxide poisoning. She was going to die. One way or another, frozen or poisoned. Either way, dead in a rental car because she'd been too stubborn to listen. "I'm sorry," she whispered to no one, to the universe, to the old trucker she'd dismissed. "I'm sorry. You were right. I should have listened. I'm sorry?" The wind screamed. The snow piled higher, and Diane Stratton, for the first time in her adult life, admitted she was helpless. At 9:17 p.m., she saw lights. At first, she thought she was hallucinating. Headlights cutting through the whiteout, moving, slowly coming toward her. Diane fumbled for the door handle and pushed it open. She waved her arms desperately, even though she knew whoever was out there probably couldn't see her. The lights came closer. A massive shape emerged from the snow, a semi-truck, moving at a crawl, its hazard lights flashing. It stopped. The driver's door opened. A figure climbed down, bulky in heavy winter gear, moving deliberately. The figure reached Diane's SUV and looked in. Even through the hood and face covering, she recognized him. Earl, the old trucker from the truck stop, the one she'd dismissed, the one whose card she'd refused to take. "Ma'am." His voice was muffled by the wind, but clear enough. "You okay?" Diane burst into tears. "I'm sorry. You were right. I should have listened. I'm sorry. Save the apologies. We need to get you out of here. Can you walk?" "I think so." My hand's eye had to clear the exhaust there, frostbitten. "Let me see." He took her hands gently, examining them even through his heavy gloves. "Not too bad yet. We'll get them warmed up. Grab anything you need from the car. We're leaving it here." Leaving it? We can't tow it in this. Highway's completely shut down. We're heading to a shelter point I know about 3 miles from here. Can you make it to my truck? Yes, I can make it. Earl helped her out of the SUV and through the deep snow. The short distance felt like a mile. The wind knocked Diane sideways twice. Earl caught her both times, his grip surprisingly strong. He helped her up into the passenger seat of the cab. The warmth inside was overwhelming. Diane started shaking again, harder than before, as her body registered the temperature change. Earl climbed back into the driver's seat, brushed snow off his jacket, and pulled off his face covering. His weathered face looked even older up close, lined with decades of hard work and worry. "There's a sleeping bag in the back. Wrap yourself in it. And there's a thermos of coffee, not great, but it's hot. Drink some." Diane did as instructed, pulling the sleeping bag around her and sipping the coffee. It tasted like it had been brewed that morning, but it was hot, and that was all that mattered. Earl put the truck in gear and started moving forward at a crawl. The visibility was maybe 10 feet. Diane had no idea how he could navigate. "How did you find me?" she asked, her teeth still chattering. "I was heading this direction anyway. Saw your hazards in the whiteout. Lucky timing. You came looking for me." He glanced at her. "Maybe. Why? After I was so rude to you, after I dismissed your warning, why would you risk your life to find me?" Earl was quiet for a moment, concentrating on driving, because that's what you do. Someone's in trouble. You help. Doesn't matter if they were rude. Doesn't matter if they ignored your advice. You help anyway. I could have died out there. Yes, ma'am. You could have. I'm sorry. For not listening. For being so arrogant. You tried to warn me and you did what a lot of people do. You thought you knew better. Thought experience in one area means you know everything. It's a common mistake. That doesn't make it okay. No, but it makes it human. We all make mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them. They drove in silence for a while, the truck crawling through the blizzard. Diane sipped the terrible coffee and tried to process what had just happened. How close she'd come to dying. How her arrogance had nearly killed her. She looked over at the old man, his hands steady on the wheel, navigating a storm that had almost claimed her life. He hadn't just saved her from the snow. He had shown her a kind of grace she didn't deserve and hadn't known existed. The apology she'd whispered in her car now felt small. The real apology would be in how she lived the rest of her life. A life she owed to the kindness of a stranger she had once scorned. The journey to the shelter was only 3 miles. But for Diane, it was a journey that would redefine everything. The air thickened, each snowflake a tiny shard of glass against the window. "Where are we going?" I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. He glanced over, his expression calm despite the chaos outside. "There's an old ranger station about 3 miles up the road. It's still maintained. The highway department uses it during storms. It has a generator, food, supplies, heat. We'll shelter there until this passes. We should be safe by morning." A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it was almost dizzying. "You've done this before," I stated, more than asked. A small, knowing smile touched his lips. "Many times. I've been driving this route for 40 years. You learn where the safe spots are." 40 years, I repeated, the number echoing in the small cab. "That's a long time." "It is," he agreed. "I used to drive with my daughter. She wanted to be a trucker, just like her old man. Smart, capable, loved the road." His voice shifted, slightly, a subtle drop in tone that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "She died on this highway 10 years ago, in a storm just like this one." My chest constricted, a sudden, sharp pain. "I'm so sorry." "Her name was Beth," he continued, his eyes fixed on the swirling snow ahead. 28 years old. She ignored a weather warning. "You know how it is when you're young? You think you can handle anything?" She got stranded. By the time I found her... ... He stopped, his jaw working silently. She'd been dead for about an hour. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Fell asleep with the engine running. The tailpipe got blocked by the snow. ... She never woke up. "Oh, God," I whispered, the words barely audible. "So," he said, his voice firm again, "when I see someone about to make the same mistake my daughter made, I try to warn them. Usually, they listen. Sometimes they don't. You didn't. But I came looking for you anyway, because I couldn't save Beth. But maybe I could save you." The dam broke. Tears I didn't know I'd left started streaming down my face again. "I'm so sorry. About your daughter. About not listening. About being exactly the kind of arrogant person who..." "Stop," he interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "You're alive. That's what matters. Beth would want me to help people, not let my grief make me bitter. So that's what I do." Help. Just then, like a miracle materializing from the whiteout, a building appeared. A small, sturdy structure, barely visible. Earl pulled the truck as close as he could and cut the engine, the sudden silence deafening. "We're going to have to run for it," he said, his voice urgent. "Stay right behind me. Don't let go of my jacket." "Ready?" I nodded, clutching the sleeping bag tighter around my shivering body. We ran. The wind screamed, a physical force pushing against us. Earl forced the station door open. It was unlocked, just as he'd said, and we stumbled inside. Collapsing out of the storm, the interior was dark and cold, but it was shelter. Real. Real shelter. He found a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness to reveal a single large room with basic furniture, a small kitchenette, and a wood-burning stove. "Generators outside," he said, his breath fogging in the cold air. "Give me 5 minutes to get it running. There's firewood by the stove. Start building a fire if you can end wheat that." He plunged back out into the blizzard, still wrapped in the sleeping bag like a mummy. I knelt by the wood stove. My mind raced back 30 years to summer camp. Lay a kindling, create airflow, light it, add larger pieces gradually. My frostbitten hands were clumsy and stiff, but somehow I managed. A tiny flame flickered, then caught. By the time Earl came back in, brushing a thick layer of snow off his jacket, a small, brave fire was crackling in the stove. "Good work," he said with a nod of approval. He flipped a switch on the wall, and the room was flooded with the harsh but welcome light of bare bulbs. "Generators running. We've got power for heat and lights. Should be comfortable enough." Comfortable was an understatement. The station was Spartan, purely functional, but compared to freezing to death in a car just an hour ago, it was the most luxurious place on earth. Earl shed his heavy winter gear, hanging it near the stove to dry. Underneath, he wore layers of thermal shirt, flannel, and his weathered face told stories of decades of hard living. "Let me see your hands," he said, his voice suddenly all busyness. I held them out. They were an angry red and swollen, with patches of alarming white. He examined them carefully, his touch surprisingly gentle. "First-degree frostbite," he diagnosed. "Not too severe. We'll warm them up gradually. Not too fast, or you'll cause more damage. Keep them under the blanket. I'll make some hot soup in a bit. That'll help warm you from the inside." "You know a lot about cold weather survival," I observed, stating the obvious. 40 years on the road teaches you things," he said, his gaze distant for a moment, "especially when you've lost someone to not knowing." He moved to the kitchenette and started pulling out supplies from the cabinets. "Highway department keeps this place stocked. Canned goods, coffee, basic medical supplies. We'll be fine until morning." I sat by the growing warmth of the stove, my body slowly thawing, my mind reeling. The near-death experience, the rescue, this stranger, this hero, and the ghost of his daughter that filled the small room. "Earl," I said quietly, "can I ask you about Beth?" He paused in his soup preparation, eased back to me. "What do you want to know?" "What was she like?" I asked, my voice soft. He was silent for a long moment, the only sounds the crackling fire and the howling wind outside. Then he turned. "She was fierce," he began, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Stubborn. Wanted to prove she could do anything a man could do. Became a trucker at 23, one of the youngest female drivers in the state. She loved its freedom, the road, the independence. I was so proud of her." "She sounds remarkable," I whispered. "She was," he affirmed. "Smart, capable, but also young. She thought she was invincible. That's what killed her, that belief that youth and capability could overcome nature. I tried to teach her to respect the road, to respect the weather, but she was 28. And I was just her old-fashioned dad who worried too much." He turned back to the counter, his shoulders slumped just a little. In that moment, he wasn't just a trucker who saved my life. He was a father, forever grieving, a loss that no amount of time could heal. And I was alive because of that love, and that loss, a debt I could never repay. That must have been so hard. Losing her like that. Hardest thing I've ever been through. Worse, because I found her. I was the one who tracked down her truck when she didn't check in. I was the one who pulled her out. She looked peaceful, like she was sleeping. Carbon monoxide poisoning, does that you just drift off? But she was gone. My little girl was gone. I'm so sorry. After that, I almost quit. Couldn't stand being on the road where she died. But then, I realized if I quit, her death meant nothing. But if I stayed, if I used what I learned to help others, then maybe something good could come from the tragedy. Maybe I could save the people Beth couldn't be saved. How many people have you helped over the years? Lost count. 20. 30. Whenever there's a storm, I stay on the road longer than I should, watching for stranded vehicles. Most times, I find nothing. Sometimes, I find someone who needs help. Today, I found you. You saved my life. Yes, ma'am. I suppose I did. Eat. You need calories to warm up properly. Can I tell you something? A confession, I guess. Sure, I was heading to the airport to fly to New York for a board meeting. I'm recommending we close a facility, the one I was visiting today. It'll eliminate 240 jobs. Good people who've worked there for decades. But the facility isn't profitable enough, so we're shutting it down and moving operations to a more efficient location. Sounds like a tough decision. It's not tough for me. It's numbers, ROI, cost-benefit, analysis, efficiency metrics. I look at spreadsheets and make recommendations. I never think about the people behind the numbers, the families, the communities. I just make the cold, logical choice and move on. And now you're questioning that. Now I'm realizing that my cold, logical approach almost killed me. I looked at your warning as irrelevant noise from someone beneath my station, someone who couldn't possibly know more than me. And I almost died because of that arrogance. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know. I can't not close unprofitable facilities. That's my job. But maybe I can do it differently. Maybe I can see the people instead of just the numbers. Maybe I can be less of whatever I've become. A human being instead of a corporate machine. Yeah, that. For what it's worth, I don't envy your position. Having to make decisions that hurt people. That's a burden, but you'll rewrite there's a difference between making hard decisions and making them without seeing the human cost. Beth used to tell me about corporate types like you. She said they lived in a different world, where everything was numbers and nothing was real. She felt sorry for them. She felt sorry for people like me. She said they were missing out on life, that they'd built these successful careers, but lost their humanity somewhere along the way, that they'd wake up one day and realize they'd wasted their lives on the wrong things. She was right. Maybe. But you're still young enough to change course. That's something. They finished their soup in silence. Earl cleaned the mugs and laid out sleeping bags. There were several stored in a closet, meant for situations exactly like this. You should try to sleep. The storm should pass by morning. Highway patrol will start clearing roads by dawn. We'll get you to the airport, or wherever you need to go. I don't think I can sleep. My mind is racing. Try anyway. Your body needs rest after what you've been through. Diane lay down in the sleeping bag near the wood stove. Earl settled into his own bag across the room, giving her privacy and space. The wind howled outside. The station creaked but held firm. The fire crackled, and Diane Stratton, senior vice president, lay in a sleeping bag in a ranger station in Wyoming, alive only because an old trucker had cared enough to save the woman who dismissed him. She stared at the ceiling and thought about Beth. 28 years old, fierce and stubborn, believing she could handle anything, dead because she wouldn't listen to her father's warnings about the road. Diane was 42, not much older. Had she been fierce and stubborn in the same way? Had she believed her education and position made her invincible? Yes. Absolutely yes. And it had nearly killed her. Earl, yes. Thank you. Not just for saving me, but for being the kind of person who saves people even when they don't deserve it. Everyone deserves to be saved, ma'am. Even the ones who don't think they need saving. I hope that's true. It is. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. Diane closed her eyes and, surprisingly, slept. Diane woke to silence. The wind had stopped. The blizzard was over. Morning light filtered through the station windows, illuminating a world transformed by snow. Earl was already up, making coffee on the electric burner. Morning, how'd you sleep? Better than I expected. What time is it? About 6:30 a.m. Storm passed around. 4. I've been monitoring the radio highway patrol, says the road will be clear enough for travel by 8. I can get you to the airport by 9:30, maybe 10. Diane sat up, her body stiff and sore. Her hand still hurt, but looked better. The white patches had faded. Thank you for everything. Just doing what needs doing. Coffee. Please. He poured her a cup. Black. Strong. Terrible. Perfect. Diane wrapped her hands around the warm mug and looked out the window at the snow-covered landscape. I've never seen this much snow. Welcome to Wyoming winter, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. I'm from New York. We get snow, but nothing like this. City snow is different. Plowed streets, salted sidewalks, heated buildings every 50 feet. Out here, snow means isolation, means you're on your own with nature, and nature doesn't care about your plans or your importance. Diane smiled slightly. I'm getting that message loud and clear. Earl sat down across from her with his own coffee. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly, the deep lines around his eyes, the silver stubble on his jaw, the weathered hands that had spent decades on the road. Can I ask you something personal? Diane said, Sure. After Beth died, how did you keep going? How did you not just give up? Earl was quiet for a moment. I wanted to give up. For about a year, I was barely functional. Kept driving because I didn't know what else to do. But my heart wasn't in it. I was just going through the motions. What changed? I found another stranded driver. A young guy, maybe 25. Stuck in a storm. Same situation as Beth. I pulled him out, got him to safety, and when we were sitting in a shelter just like this one, waiting out the storm, he told me about his new job, new wife, baby on the way, and I realized if I hadn't been on the road that night, he'd be dead. His kid would grow up without a father. His wife would be a widow. And that gave you purpose. It gave me a reason. Beth died, and I couldn't save her. But I could save others. I could use what I learned from losing her to make sure their families didn't lose their daughters, their sons, their parents. That felt like something, not enough to heal the grief, but enough to make the grief bearable. You turned tragedy into mission. Something like that. Beth would have liked that. She was always about helping people. Used to pick up hitchhikers, help stranded motorists, go out of her way for strangers. She had a good heart, so honoring her means living the way she lived, helping people even when it's inconvenient. Diane thought about her own life. What would her legacy be? Making companies more profitable, eliminating jobs to improve shareholder value. There was nothing noble about that. Nothing that would make anyone remember her fondly. I've wasted my life, she said quietly. That's dramatic. No, it's true. I'm 42 years old. I've spent 20 years climbing a corporate ladder. And for what? So I can make rich people richer. So I can eliminate jobs and call it efficiency. What's the point? What do you want a point to be? I don't know. Something that matters. Something that helps people instead of hurting them. Something I'd be proud to have as a legacy. Earl studied her. You had a near-death experience that changes people. Makes them question everything. But ma'am, you can't completely overhaul your life based on one bad night. That's how people make rash decisions they regret. So what should I do? Go home. Process. What happened? Think about what you learned. Then make deliberate choices about how you want to change. Don't quit your job tomorrow. Don't burn down your life. But do start making different choices. Small ones at first. See how they feel. Like what? Like maybe when you're closing that facility, you think about the 240 people losing their jobs. Not as numbers on a spreadsheet, but as humans. Maybe you structure the closure differently, be their severance, job placement, assistance, retraining programs. Maybe you can't stop the closure, but you can make it less devastating for the people affected. That's more expensive, reduces the efficiency gains. So, reduce them, take slightly smaller profits, in exchange for being slightly more human. The board might not like it, but they'll survive, and you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror. Diane considered that. It was sensible, practical, not the dramatic life overhaul. Her emotions were demanding, but a measured approach to change. You're very wise. I'm very old. There's a difference. Wisdom is just accumulated mistakes, plus the willingness to learn from them. I've made a lot of mistakes, lost a lot, and I've tried to learn from all of it. I want to learn from this. I don't want to go back to being who I was yesterday. Then don't. Be someone different. Someone better. But do it deliberately, not reactively. That's how real change happens. They finished their coffee and prepared to leave. Earl gathered his gear, checked the weather conditions, and confirmed that the highway was passable. Ready to go back to civilization? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. They trudged through the deep snow to Earl's truck. The world was blindingly white, pristine, beautiful in a way that took Diane's breath away. It's so peaceful now, she said. Hard to believe it was trying to kill me 12 hours ago. That's nature. Beautiful and deadly. You have to respect. They climbed into the truck, and Earl started the engine. It roared to life, reliable as ever. As they pulled onto the highway, now clear enough for careful travel, Diane looked back at the ranger station, where she'd sheltered. It looked small and insignificant against the vast white landscape, but it had been her salvation. I'll never forget this place, she said. The world was a blinding expanse of white, pristine and beautiful, in a way that stole Diane's breath. They trudged through the deep snow towards Earl's truck. It's so peaceful now, she said, her voice a soft cloud in the frigid air. It's hard to believe it was trying to kill me just 12 hours ago. Earl nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. That's nature. Beautiful and deadly. You have to respect both. They climbed into the truck's cab, and the engine roared to life. A familiar, reliable sound. As they pulled onto the highway, now just clear enough for careful travel. Diane glanced back at the ranger station. It looked so small, so insignificant against the vast white landscape. But it had been her salvation. I'll never forget this place, she whispered. Earl's voice was steady. Most people don't. Near-death experiences tend to stick with you. They drove slowly as the dawn arrived, painting the snow-covered world in shades of pink and gold. It was stunningly beautiful, a stark contrast to the terror of the night before. There's your rental, Earl said, pointing to a snow-covered lump on the side of the road. Want to stop and grab anything from it? Diane nodded. My laptop and suitcase, if they're not buried. Earl pulled over, and together they dug her belongings out of the buried SUV. Miraculously, everything was there, undamaged. The rental company is going to charge you for abandoning the vehicle, Earl observed, stating a simple fact. Diane just shook her head. I don't care. They can bill me whatever they want. I'm alive. That's worth any fee. Back in the warm truck, they continued toward the airport. The silence between them was different, now comfortable, companionable. The awkwardness had melted away with the rising sun. As the airport came into view, Diane finally spoke. Earl, she began. I need to do something. I need to make amends for being so rude to you yesterday. He glanced at her. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do, she insisted. You saved my life. But more than that, you've taught me something important about humility, about listening to people, no matter their position or status, about valuing experience and wisdom. I was so wrong about you. I judged you based on your job and your age and your appearance, and I almost died because of that prejudice. Ma'am, that's generous of you to say. It's not generous. She cut him off gently. It's honest. And I want to do something for you. Not as payment No, I can't pay you for saving my life, but as a way to honor Beth. To help continue the work you've been doing in her memory. Earl was quiet for a moment. I don't need anything. I know, she said. But please, let me do this. Let me contribute to something meaningful. What do you need? A newer truck, equipment, what would help you continue helping others? Earl thought about it, his gaze distant. There's a program, Wyoming Truckers Emergency Response. We volunteer to patrol highways during storms, help stranded motorists, but it's underfunded. We can't afford enough emergency equipment, blankets, medical supplies, communication gear. If you wanted to help, that's where it would make a real difference. How much does the program need? Diane asked, her voice firm. Honestly, about $50,000 would transform it. We could equip 20 trucks with proper emergency gear. Could save a lot of lives. I'll donate $100,000, Diane said without hesitation, and I'll match donations from others, dollar for dollar, up to another $100,000. If that's allowed. Earl stared at her, genuinely shocked. That's incredibly generous. It's the least I can do, she replied. My company will do it as a corporate donation. Good PR, tax deductible, and it genuinely helps people. Everybody wins. A small, sad smile touched Earl's lips. Beth would have liked you. I doubt that, Diane said softly. But maybe who I'm trying to become would be someone she'd approve of. They arrived at the airport, and Earl pulled up to the departures curb, putting the old truck in park. This is where we part ways, he said. Diane turned to him, her heart full. Thank you, Earl, for saving my life, for teaching me, for being patient with someone who didn't deserve your patience. I'll never forget this. You're welcome, he said. And ma'am, whatever you decide to do with your life, with your career, with those 240 jobs make, sure you can live with it. Make sure when you look in the mirror, you like the person looking back. That's the only measure of success that matters. I will, she promised. I promise. She climbed out of the truck, grabbed her bags, and watched as Earl drove away. The old semi merged back onto the highway, a solitary figure heading toward whatever came next. Diane stood in the cold morning air, watching him go, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. She had almost died. She'd been saved by someone she'd dismissed as irrelevant, and in the process, she'd learned something essential about humility, about listening, and about what truly mattered in life. Now, she had to figure out what to do with that lesson. She looked out at the snow-covered landscape, the rising sun painting the world in shades of soft pink and shimmering gold. I'll never forget this place, she murmured, the words catching in her throat. Earl, his hand steady on the wheel, gave a slight nod. Most people don't. Near-death experiences tend to stick with you. They drove on in a comfortable silence, the crunch of the truck's tires on the snow the only sound. Dawn had fully broken, and the scene was breathtakingly beautiful. A stark contrast to the terror of the night before. Earl pointed ahead. There's your rental, he said. It was just a snow-covered lump on the side of the highway, almost completely buried. Want to stop and grab anything from it? Diane thought for a moment. My laptop and suitcase, if they're not buried. Earl pulled the big rig over. He didn't just wait in the cab. He got out and helped her dig. They shoveled away the heavy, wet snow, and to her amazement, there was her SUV. Her belongings were inside, miraculously untouched and undamaged. As she loaded her things into Earl's truck, he observed, rental company is going to charge you for abandoning the vehicle. Diane just shook her head, a small, genuine smile on her face. I don't care. They can bill me whatever they want. I'm alive. That's worth any fee. She finally understood what that meant. Back in the warm cab, they continued toward the airport. The silence that had once been awkward and filled with tension was now companionable, easy. It was the silence of two people who had been through something profound together. As the signs for the airport began to appear, Diane knew she couldn't leave things as they were. "Earl," she began, turning to face him. "I need to do something. I need to make amends for being so rude to you yesterday." Earl just kept his eyes on the road. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do," she insisted, her voice firm. "You saved my life. And more than that, you've taught me something incredibly important. About humility. About listening to people. Truly listening, regardless of their position or their status. You taught me to value experience and wisdom over a fancy title." She took a deep breath, the confession tumbling out. "I was so wrong about you, Earl. I judged you based on your job and your age and your appearance, and I almost died because of that prejudice. I was arrogant and foolish." Earl finally glanced at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Ma'am, that's generous of you to say." "It's not generous," she cut in. "It's just honest, and I want to do something for you. Not as a paymentee. No, I can't pay you for saving my life, but as a way to honor Beth. To help continue the work you've been doing in her memory." Earl seemed uncomfortable. "I don't need anything. I know you don't," Diane said gently. "But please, let me do this. Let me contribute to something meaningful." "What do you need? A newer truck? Better equipment? What would help you continue helping others on these roads?" Earl was quiet for a long time, the gears of the truck grinding as he downshifted for an exit. He seemed to be truly considering it. "Well," he started slowly. "There's a program. It's called Wyoming Truckers Emergency Response. We're all volunteers. We patrol the highways during storms, help stranded motorists, just like I helped you." He sighed. "But it's completely underfunded. We can't afford enough of the basic emergency equipment, trauma kits, warm blankets, medical supplies, reliable communication gear. It's just a few of us using what we have in our own trucks. If you wanted to help, that's where it would make a real difference." Diane's mind, so used to calculating numbers and returns on investment, immediately kicked into gear. "How much does the program need?" she asked, her voice clear and direct. Earl hesitated. "Honestly, about $50,000 would completely transform it. We could properly equip 20 trucks. We could save a lot of lives with that." Diane didn't even blink. "I'll donate $100,000. Earl stared at her, his jaw slack. "And," she continued, "I'll match any donations from others, dollar for dollar, up to another $100,000. If that's allowed." "Can I do that?" Earl was speechless for a moment. He pulled his gaze back to the road, shaking his head slightly in disbelief. That's incredibly generous, ma'am." "It's the least I can do," Diane said, a new sense of purpose filling her. "My company will do it as a corporate donation. It's good PR for us. It's tax deductible. And most importantly, it genuinely helps people. Everybody wins." Earl was quiet for another moment before a small, sad smile touched his lips. "Beth would have liked you." Diane felt a pang in her chest. "I doubt that. The woman I was yesterday. She wouldn't have. But maybe who I'm trying to become would be someone she'd approve of." They pulled up to the airport departures terminal. Earl put the big truck in park, the engine rumbling low. "Well, this is where we part ways," he said, his voice soft. Diane turned to him, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you, Earl, for saving my life, for teaching me a lesson I desperately needed, for being patient with someone who didn't deserve your patience for a single second. I'll never, ever forget this." He gave her a warm, genuine smile. "You're welcome, and ma'am, whatever you decide to do with your life, with your career, with those 240 jobs, make sure you can live with it. Make sure when you look in the mirror, you like the person looking back at you. That's the only measure of success that truly matters." "I will," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise." She climbed out of the truck, her own suitcase feeling impossibly light. She grabbed her bags and stood on the curb, watching as Earl's old semi merged back onto the highway, a titan of the road heading off to whatever came next. Diane stood there in the cold morning air, watching until the truck was just a speck in the distance. She felt something profound shift inside her, a fundamental change in her very core. She had almost died. The flight home was a bust. Weather had snarled up air travel across the entire region. So Diane didn't make it back to New York until 3 in the afternoon the next day. She went straight to her apartment, showered, changed, and planted herself at the kitchen table with her laptop. There it was, sitting in her inbox. The Jackson facility report, the one she was supposed to present to the board. The one that recommended shutting the place down and cutting 240 jobs. Diane opened it and read her own words, her own analysis. Every single word was factually correct. The facility was inefficient. Closing it would absolutely save the company money. Moving operations would boost profitability. But as she read, a hollow feeling grew in her stomach. Something was missing. The human element, the real-world impact on actual people. She opened a blank document and typed a new title. Addendum to Jackson Facility Analysis. Human Impact Assessment and Alternative Proposal. For the next 6 hours, Diane didn't just work. She dug deep. She researched Jackson, Wyoming, a town of just 10,000 people. She learned what happens to small towns when their main employer packs up and leaves. She calculated the true cost of losing 240 jobs, not just the severance packages, but the devastating economic ripple that would tear through the community. Then, she'd built an alternative. Instead of a complete shutdown, what if they modernized the facility, kept it open, and invested in its future? Sure, the initial investment would be higher, but it would save jobs and maintain their company's footprint in the community. She ran the numbers again and again. The alternative would cut profits by about 3% compared to her original proposal. But then this was a huge boute, would save 185 of the 240 jobs. It would also be a powerful statement of corporate responsibility, something that could generate positive press and strengthen their brand reputation. When she finally finished, it was well after midnight, but what she had in front of her was something she was proud of, something that balanced the cold, hard needs of business with the warm, vital needs of human beings, something she could present to the board without feeling like she was selling a piece of her soul. She attached the file to an email and sent it to her colleague, Jennifer, with a note, "Alternative proposal for Monday's board meeting. Please distribute this. I know it's not what they were expecting, but I think it's the right one." Then, she picked up her phone and called Jennifer directly. Despite the late hour, a worried voice answered. "Diane, are you okay? We've been trying to reach you. What? You missed your flight. You weren't answering emails." "I got caught in a blizzard," Diane said, her voice steady. "Spent the night stranded on the highway. I'm fine now, but it was a close call." "Oh my God," Jennifer whispered. "You could have died." "I almost did," Diane admitted. "I was saved by a truck driver, a man I'd been rude to earlier that day. Someone I had completely dismissed as irrelevant. He risked his own life to find me and give me shelter until the storm passed. It's made me think about a lot of things." "Like what?" Jennifer asked, her voice soft. "Like whether the way we do business is actually right. Whether efficiency at any cost is really the gold standard we should be striving for. Whether I want to spend the rest of my career making decisions that I couldn't defend on a moral level." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, Jennifer said, "This is about the Jackson facility." "Yes," Diane confirmed. "I've prepared an alternative proposal. It's not as profitable as a full closer, but it's more humane. I'm recommending we restructure instead. The board won't like it." "No, they won't," Jennifer agreed. "Diane, are you sure about this? This could seriously hurt your standing with the board. It could cost you future opportunities." "I'm sure," Diane said, feeling a certainty she hadn't felt in years. And if it costs me opportunities with a board that only values maximizing profit, then maybe those aren't opportunities I want. Maybe I want to work for a company that values people as much as it values profits. Jennifer let out a small laugh. Who are you, and what have you done with Diane Stratton? Diane actually laughed back. I'm still me, just a version of me who's been reminded that human beings matter more than spreadsheets. I'll see you Monday for the meeting, and thanks for covering for me while I was off the grid. She hung up and sat there in the quiet of her apartment, looking out at the glittering New York skyline. This was her world, a universe of steel, glass, and raw ambition. Millions of people, all chasing success in a city that never, ever stopped. But tonight, it all felt different, less important, more fragile. She had almost died in a blizzard in Wyoming. An old truck driver had saved her. All because he had lost his own daughter to a storm just like it, and had dedicated his life to making sure no one else suffered the same fate. Diane looked at her life. What was it dedicated to? Making shareholders a little richer? Suddenly, that seemed like a pathetically small purpose. She needed to do better. To be better. To find a way to use her skills, her position, for something that truly mattered. The Jackson facility was a start, but she knew, deep in her bones, it was only the beginning. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that explores the human side of our world. Monday morning, Diane Stratton stood before the board of directors, her heart a steady drum against her ribs. The air in the room was thick with expectation, the scent of expensive coffee and even more expensive suits. She presented her alternative proposal. The reaction was mixed, a polite way of saying it was a battlefield of opinions. Some board members, the younger ones mostly, seemed to appreciate the human-centered approach she was advocating. But others, the old guard, saw it as soft, inefficient, a betrayal of their sacred profit maximization mandate. Richard Pemberton, the CFO, a man who saw the world in spreadsheets, was the first to attack. With all due respect, Miss Stratton, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. This proposal reduces our projected savings by 40%. We are talking about millions of dollars in lost efficiency gains. Why on earth would we accept that? Diane took a slow, deliberate breath, anchoring herself. Because 240 people losing their jobs isn't just a number on a spreadsheet, Reacher. It's families. It's an entire community. It's people who have given years, decades of their lives to this company. And while I understand our fiduciary duty to our shareholders, I believe we also have an obligation to our employees and the communities we operate in. Pemberton scoffed. Obligation doesn't pay dividends. No, Diane conceded, her voice firm. But reputation matters. Corporate responsibility matters. If we shutter the Jackson facility and gut an entire town, we will face a firestorm of backlash. Bad press. Difficulty recruiting top talent in the future. We'll earn a reputation as a company that treats its employees as disposable assets. That has a cost too, even if it's harder to quantify on your spreadsheets. Another board member, a woman Diane had always found calculating, chimed in. You've never cared about this before, Diane. Why the sudden change of heart? This was it, the moment of truth. Diane could have lied. She could have spun a tale about new market analytics, about shifting consumer sentiment towards socially responsible brands. It would have been the easy way out. But Earl's voice, gravelly and kind, echoed in her mind. Asterisk. Make sure when you look in the mirror, you like the person looking back. Asterisk. I was stranded in a blizzard last week, she began, her voice quiet but clear. The room fell silent. I almost died because I was too arrogant to listen to someone's warning about the weather. I was saved by a truck driver, a man I had dismissed as irrelevant. That experience, it made me reevaluate my priorities. It made me realize that treating people as numbers on a page instead of as human beings is not just morally wrong, it's dangerous. It leads to arrogance, and it leads to monumentally bad decisions. The silence in the room was now absolute. Even Pemberton looked taken aback. Finally, the chairman, David Morrison, A man who was the epitome of an old-school 68-year-old businessman, broke the quiet. Are you saying your near-death experience has fundamentally changed your business philosophy? Yes, Diane said, meeting his gaze without flinching. Yes, I am. I'm saying I don't want to work for a company that only values profit. I want to work for a company that balances profit with responsibility. And if that's not this company, then maybe I need to find a different company to work for. That sounds like a threat, Miss Stratton. It's not a threat. It's a statement of values. I am presenting this alternative proposal because I believe, deep in my bones, that it is the right thing to do. If the board rejects it, that is your prerogative. But I will not recommend the full closure. I will not put my name on the order that destroys a community just to increase our profits by a measly 3%. The board went into a closed session. Diane was politely asked to leave while they deliberated. She sat on a plush bench in the hallway, her hands clasped in her lap. Her heart was pounding, a frantic bird trapped in her chest. She could untell if she'd just committed career suicide or staged the most important intervention of her life. But beneath the fear, a strange, unfamiliar calm settled over her. Whatever happened next, she had stood up for what she believed was right. That had to count for something. It had to. 30 agonizing minutes later, the door opened. She was called back in. The faces around the long table were unreadable. Morrison spoke, his voice grave. The board has voted. We have decided to accept your alternative proposal. We will restructure the Jackson facility instead of closing it. Relief washed over Diane so intensely she felt like, we are doing this against our better judgment, Morrison continued, his eyes locking onto hers. We're backing you based largely on your argument about reputation and, frankly, your exceptional track record of good recommendations. But let me be clear, Miss Stratton. This is not a blank check. We expect this restructuring to succeed. We expect those jobs to be preserved and that facility to become profitable. If these fails, we will revisit the closure, and it will be your failure. I understand, Diane managed to say, her voice steady. Thank you. Don't thank us, Morrison said, his tone sharp. Just make sure it works. Diane left the boardroom feeling lighter than she had in years. She had taken a stand. She had made a decision based on something more than just the cold, hard numbers. And somehow, improbably, the board had backed her. Back in her office, the Manhattan skyline sprawling before her. She picked up the phone and dialed. Earl Patterson Trucking. Earl, it's Diane Stratton, the woman from the blizzard. There was a warm chuckle on the other end of the line. Miss Stratton, it's good to hear from you. How are you doing? I'm doing well, Earl. Very well. I wanted to let you know. I presented an alternative proposal for the facility I was going to close. Instead of eliminating all 240 jobs, we're restructuring and saving 185 of them. It was a much harder sell to the board, and less profitable on paper. But it was the right thing to do. You helped me see that? Well now, Earl said, his voice filled with genuine pleasure. That's good news for those families. You should be proud of yourself. I am, Diane admitted, a small smile playing on her lips. And I wanted to thank you again for saving my life, for teaching me, for being an example of what it means to care about more than just your own success. You're welcome. Though honestly, you did the real work. I just gave you a little push in the right direction. I also processed that donation, Diane added. $100,000 to the Wyoming Truckers Emergency Response, with matching funds available. It should hit your account within the week. Earl was quiet for a moment. That's incredibly generous, Miss Stratton. That money will save lives. Beth would have loved that. I hope so, Diane said softly. And, Earl, if you ever find yourself in New York, please let me know. I'd like to buy you a proper dinner. A thank you that doesn't come from a can. He laughed. I might just take you up on that someday. Safe travels, Miss Stratton. Safe travels, Earl. She hung up the phone and turned back to the window, staring out at the familiar skyline. The same view she had seen every single day for 12 years. But somehow, today, it looked different. Less like a cold monument to ambition and more like a vibrant tapestry of millions of individual people, all just trying to build lives that mattered, and for the first time, she felt like she was one of them. Not separate, not above, just one of millions, trying to do better. 6 months passed. The Jackson facility restructuring was finished. The numbers, well, they were acceptable. I mean, closing it down completely would have been more profitable. No doubt about it. But we were still in the black. And more importantly, 185 jobs were saved. The local paper even ran a feature on it. The headline was, "Company chooses people over profits, Jackson facilities saved through innovative restructuring." The positive press we got from that was huge. Suddenly, we had a flood of applications from people wanting to work for us. Our own employee satisfaction scores shot up. Even the board, who had been so skeptical, had to grudgingly admit that my approach had some unexpected benefits that didn't show up on a spreadsheet. One afternoon, I was in my office, buried in quarterly reports, when my assistant Jennifer buzzed me. "Diane, there's someone here to see you." Says his name is Earl Patterson. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says you know him. Oh, I couldn't believe it. "Earl's here." "Send him in immediately." A moment later, Earl walked into my office. He looked a little out of place in the sleek, corporate environment, wearing clean jeans and a button-down shirt. It was clearly his version of dressing up for the city. "Earl, what a surprise," I said, getting up to greet him. "What brings you all the way to New York?" "Had a delivery in the city," he said with a small smile. "Thought I'd stop by and say hello. Hope that's okay." "It's more than okay. It's wonderful. Please, sit down." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Can I get you anything?" "Coffee. Water." "Coffee would be good. Black." I ordered the coffee and sat down, eager to catch up. "So, how have things been?" "Good. Real good," he said, his eyes lighting up. "That donation you made. It's already saving lives. We've managed to equip 15 of our trucks with full emergency gear. And get this, in the past 6 months, we've pulled out 4 stranded motorists who probably wouldn't have made it otherwise. One of them was a family with 3 kids. So, your money saved 5 lives. Directly." Hearing that, It was incredible. I just shook my head in awe. "That's your legacy." O continued. "Every life we save from now on is partly thanks to you. Beth would have appreciated that." I felt my eyes start to well up. "I hope so," I whispered. "I think about her often. About what you told me. About how she died because she wouldn't listen to the warnings. Just like I almost did. It's kept me humble. It's kept me checking my own arrogance." "That's good," Earl nodded. "Humility's underrated, especially in places like this." He gestured around my office, at the towering buildings visible through the window. "I imagine this world seems pretty strange to you," I said. "A little," he admitted. "But, you get Italiano. Everyone here is chasing something. In my world, it's miles and deliveries. In your world, it's profits and promotions. The details are different, but the drive is the same. Except you drive for something beyond yourself," I countered. "You're helping people. I was just accumulating success." He picked up on my wording. I took a deep breath. I'm trying to be different now. The Jackson facility, the one I was so determined to clousai, found another way. We restructured it instead. Saved most of the jobs. It was less profitable on paper, but it felt more human. It felt right, in a way none of my old decisions ever did. "Good for you," Earl said, his expression sincere. "That takes courage in a place like this." Just then, the coffee arrived. We sipped it in a comfortable silence for a moment, the city's hustle and bustle feeling a million miles away. "Can I ask you something?" Earl said, breaking the quiet. "Something that's been on my mind." "Of course." "Why did you really change?" he asked, looking at me intently. "I've seen people have near-death experiences before. Most of them, they go right back to who they were within a month. They get scared, they make all these promises to change, and then they forget. They fall back into their old patterns. But you actually changed. Why? It was a deep question, and I had to really think about it. Honestly, I began, because I saw myself clearly for the very first time when I was stranded in that car, convinced I was going to die. I looked back at my life and realized I'd built nothing that truly mattered. No real relationships, no legacy beyond a stack of corporate reports. There was no one who would remember me fondly. All I had was success without substance. And that scared you. It terrified me, I admitted. I was 42 years old, and I felt like I had completely wasted my life chasing things that didn't matter. If I had died in that car, my obituary would have read successful executive. No family, no lasting impact. That's just pathetic. So you decided to build something different. I decided to try, I clarified. I'm not sure I'm succeeding all the time, but I'm trying to make decisions I can be proud of. To see the people behind the numbers. To use the position I have for something more than just making rich people richer. Earl studied my face for a long moment. You're succeeding, he said finally. I can see it in your face. You look different than you did 6 months ago. Less stressed, more at peace. And he was right. I felt different. I feel like I finally understand what matters, I told him. Relationships. The impact you have on others. Being able to look at yourself in the mirror without shame. Those things. They're worth more than any promotion or bonus. I feel different now, like I finally get what really matters. It's the relationships, the impact you have on others. It's being able to look at yourself in the mirror without feeling ashamed. Those things are worth so much more than any promotion. Beth would have liked you. If she had met this version of you, the two of you would have become friends. That means a lot to me. More than, After finishing our coffee, Earl stood up to leave. I should get going. I've got a delivery to make, and then I'm heading back to Wyoming. Will you keep in touch? Let me know how the emergency response program is going. Sure. And Miss Stratton, thank you. Not just for the money, though that's helping a lot, but for listening, for changing, for proving that people can be better than they were. That gives me hope. You gave me hope first. You showed me what it means to turn tragedy into a mission. To use your pain to help others. That's what I'm trying to do now. Use my privilege and position to help, instead of just for profit. Then you're doing Beth proud. She's smiling down, I'm sure of it. I walked Earl to the elevator. We shook hands, firm grip. A moment of mutual respect. Safe travels, Earl. Safe travels, Miss Stratton. And remember, stay humble. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you get yourself in trouble. I'll remember. I promise. I watched the elevator doors close and stood for a moment in the hallway, reflecting on the unlikely friendship between a corporate executive and an old truck driver. How a near-death experience had truly become a new life. How the person I'd initially dismissed had become one of the most important people in my world. My assistant, Jennifer, appeared beside me. That was Earl. The truck driver who saved you. That's him. He seems nice. Very, genuine. He is. He's one of the best people I've ever met. And I almost missed knowing him because I judged him by his appearance and his job. You've really changed, Diane. I've noticed you're different than you were 6 months ago. Is that good or bad? Good. Definitely good. You're more human now. More approachable. People aren't afraid of you anymore. They respect you, but they're not terrified. I was terrifying. You were efficient and cold. You got results, but you scared people. Now you get results, and people actually like you. That's better. I thought about that, about who I had been versus who I was becoming, about the cost of my old approach and the benefits of the new one. I'm trying, Jennifer, every day. I'm trying to be better than I was. Some days I succeed. Some days I fall back into old patterns. But I keep trying. That's all any of us can do. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister. We had been estranged for a decade, family falling out over our mother's estate that had never been resolved. I had been too proud to reach out, too invested in being right to admit I might have been wrong. I dialed her number, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Hello. Her voice was wary, surprised. Vanessa, it's Diane. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, finally, Diane, wow. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I know. It's been too long. I'm calling to apologize. For the fight, for not reaching out. For letting my pride keep us apart for a decade. What brought this on? I almost died 6 months ago. Got stranded in a blizzard. Nearly froze to death. It made me realize life is too short to hold on to grudges. Especially with family. Especially with my only sister. You almost died. It's a long story. But yes, and it changed my perspective on a lot of things, including how I've treated the people I love. Van, I'm sorry. For everything. I was wrong to let money come between us. I was wrong to choose pride over family. Can you forgive me? Vanessa started crying on the other end. Of course, I forgive you. God, Diane, I've missed you. I've wanted to reach out so many times, but I just didn't know how. I should have been the one to reach out. I should have done it years ago. Well, you're doing it now. That's what matters. We talked for 2 hours. We caught up on all the lost years, sharing stories about our lives, our triumphs, and our struggles. We made plans to meet in person, to finally begin rebuilding the relationship that had been broken by stubbornness and pride. When we finally hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. It was like another piece of my old, broken life had been repaired. Another precious relationship salvaged from the wreckage of my own arrogance. This was just the beginning. I took out a pen and paper and made a list of other people I needed to reconnect with. Old friends I'd neglected in my climb up the corporate ladder. Colleagues I had been unnecessarily harsh with. People who simply deserved an apology. The list was long, surprisingly long. But I wasn't discouraged. I would work through it, one person at a time. One amends at a time, because that's what real change looked like. It wasn't about big, dramatic gestures. It was about the consistent, small choices you make every single day to be a better person than you were the day before. Earl had taught me that. His daily choice to get back on the road to help people, to honor Beth's memory through simple acts of service, that was his mission. I could do the same. I could honor the profound lesson I'd learned by living differently, by truly seeing people, not just their roles or what they could do for me, by making choices that I could be proud of, choices that aligned with the person I wanted to become. This new path wouldn't undo the past. It would unmagically erase the years of cold efficiency or the people I had hurt along the way, but it would create a different future. A better legacy. And for now, that was more than enough. It was everything. If you've ever felt the need for a second chance, or if you're on your own journey of change, remember that it starts with one small step, one phone call, one apology. Thank you for listening to my story today. I hope it gives you a little bit of hope, just as Earl gave hope to me. 1 year after the blizzard, I found myself back in Wyoming. I'd arranged to visit the Jackson facility, to see the restructuring in person, meet the employees whose jobs had been saved, and truly understand the impact of the decision I'd made. But first, there was another stop I had to make. I drove to the ranger station where Earl had sheltered me. It looked exactly as I remembered: small, sturdy, essential. Walking through the gentle flurries, a stark contrast to the blizzard from a year ago, I stood looking at the building that had saved my life. A moment later, a truck pulled up. Earl's semi. He had agreed to meet me here. He climbed down from the cab, wearing the same denim jacket and trucker's cap. "Miss Stratton, good to see you," he said, his voice calm as ever. "Diane, Please, I insisted. We've been through too much for formalities. Diane, then, what brings you back to Wyoming? I wanted to see the Jackson facility, I explained. But more than that, I wanted to come here too. 2 T's. Place. On the anniversary of the night that changed my life. He nodded slowly. It was a year ago today, wasn't it? Yes, I confirmed. 1 year since I ignored your warning and almost died. 1 year since you saved me despite having every reason not to. I wanted to mark the anniversary. To remember, and to thank you again. You've thanked me plenty, he said with a slight wave of his hand. The donation, the letters, the Christmas card, you don't owe me anything else. I owe you everything, I told him, the words catching in my throat. You gave me a second chance at life, and more than that, you gave me a second chance at being human, at being someone I'm proud to be. We walked towards the ranger station together. I tried the door, it was unlocked. Whose does before? We stepped inside. The space was exactly as I remembered it. The wood stove, the basic furniture, the supplies neatly arranged on shelves. It felt like stepping back in time. This place hasn't changed, I observed, running a hand along a dusty shelf. No reason for it to, Earl replied. It does what it needs to provides shelter during storms. That's enough. I sat on the very same sleeping bag I'd used a year ago, the one I thought I'd never get up from. I've thought about this place so many times, I confessed, my voice barely a whisper, about lying here, thinking I was going to die, about you telling me about your daughter, Beth, about realizing just how empty my own life was. Earl looked at me, his gaze steady and knowing. And now, is your life still empty? A genuine smile spread across my face. No. It's fuller than it's ever been. I have relationships again. I reconnected with my sister, made new friends, and I actually know my coworkers as human beings now. I have work that matters. Restructuring the Jackson facility was just the start. I've implemented similar human-centered approaches at 3 other facilities since then. I have a purpose beyond just profit. That's good, he said, a hint of a smile on his own face. That's real growth. And I owe that growth to you, I said, meeting his eyes. To the example you set, to the lesson you taught me about turning tragedy into a mission. Earl sat across from me on a simple wooden chair. The silence hung between us for a moment before he spoke again. Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone. Of course, I said, leaning forward, giving him my full attention. When Beth died, he began, his voice low. I blamed myself. For years, I carried that guilt. I thought maybe if I'd tried harder to teach her caution, if I'd been a better father, if I'd just done something differently, she'd still be alive. That guilt, it almost destroyed me. I held my breath, listening to this incredibly strong man reveal his deepest pain. How did you get past it? I asked softly. I realized something, he said, looking past me, as if seeing a memory. Beth made her own choice. She was an adult. She knew the risks she was taking. And while I could have tried harder to teach her, ultimately, she was responsible for her decisions. My guilt wasn't helping her or honoring her memory. What helped was channeling that guilt into action, into saving others. So you forgave yourself? I asked. He shook his head slightly. Not completely. I don't think I ever will. I still carry the weight of her death, but I've learned to carry it productively, to use it as motivation instead of letting it crush me. And that's what I want for you too. I was confused. What do you mean? I asked. What guilt do I have to carry? Earl's gaze returned to mine, sharp and direct. The guilt of who you were. The woman who valued profits over people. The woman who saw warnings as obstacles. You've changed, Diane, and that's incredible. But you can't just erase the person you were. You can't just forget the decisions you made that hurt people, even if you've made amends. His words hit me like a physical blow. He was right. I had been so focused on my new life, my new self, that I'd been trying to bury the old me. Forgetting the past is a way of letting yourself off the hook, he continued. But remembering it, carrying it, that's what keeps you honest. That's what ensures you never go back. Don't run from the woman you were. Let her be a constant reminder of the woman you become, and the woman you want to continue to be. I sat there, in that small, life-saving room, and I finally understood. My past wasn't a monster to be slain or a ghost to be It was a part of me, a heavy, uncomfortable part, but a necessary one. Earl didn't just teach me how to survive a storm. He taught me how to live with the aftermath. He showed me that true strength isn't about being flawless. It's about carrying your flaws with purpose. He stood up, ready to leave. Use that guilt, Diane. Don't let it crush you. Let it fuel you. Let it be the wind at your back, pushing you to be better every single day. I nodded, unable to speak. I watched him walk out of the ranger station and climb back into his semi. As the truck pulled away, disappearing into the falling snow, I was left alone with his words. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the woman I used to be. I was ready to carry her with me, not as a burden, but as my compass. My past wouldn't define me, but it would guide me, ensuring that I never lost my way again. Stay safe out there. You know, we all carry a little bit of guilt. Guilt about choices we've made in the past, the way we treated people, how we acted, maybe even who we used to be. And that guilt, it can be a powerful motivator for change, which is a good thing. It pushes us to be better. But at some point, you have to let it go. You have to forgive yourself. You have to look back and acknowledge that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. And now that you know better, you're doing better. That's all anyone can ask. That's enough. But it's hard, isn't it? Sometimes I'm just not sure I can forgive myself. Some of my choices, they hurt people. They might have ended careers, or even, I don't know, destroyed lives. It's a heavy thought to carry. The thing is, you can't go back and undo those choices. You can't rewind the clock. All you can do is make better ones moving forward. And you are. Think about it. Maybe there's a project you saved, a team you supported. Maybe 185 families still have an income because of a decision you fought for. That matters. That right there, that's redemption. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? The thought that we can be more than our worst choices. And the truth is, you are more. Everyone is. We are all more than our worst moments, our biggest mistakes. The real question is whether you're willing to grow beyond them. And if you're even listening to this, I bet you've already proven that you are. So give yourself some credit. Forgive yourself. Let go of that weight and move forward. I want to tell you about something I'm really proud of. After a really tough restructuring at one of our facilities, Jackson facilities succeeded. The board asked me to develop a new company-wide approach. They wanted a framework for how we could balance profits with our human impact. So I spent 6 months creating it. Primera Calidad. Human Capital Preservation Initiative. It's a bit of a corporate name, I know. But the idea behind it is simple. It requires every facility closing or major restructuring to first consider alternatives that could preserve jobs. Now, it won't always be possible to save every job. But we have to try. It has to be considered. And when we do have to close a facility, we're now committed to providing generous severance packages, job placement assistance, and even retraining programs for our employees. So, how did the board react? Well, it was mixed. Some of them thought it was too soft, that it wasn't focused enough on the bottom line. But I sold it to them as a form of risk management. I argued that treating our employees better leads to a better company reputation, which makes recruiting top talent easier, and it reduces our legal issues down the road. The business case is actually really solid, even if you set aside the moral argument for a moment. And you know what? I'm so proud of that. I'm proud that a near-death experience I went through led to this kind of systemic change in a large corporation. There was a tragedy that opened my eyes. A young woman named Beth, whose death taught me a profound lesson about honoring tragedy through action. And now, her legacy is resulting in better treatment for thousands of workers. It feels like her legacy is a part of this, too. Does that make any sense? A friend of mine, Earl, who taught me this lesson. His eyes got wet when I told him. He said, "It makes perfect sense. And yes, that's Beth's legacy. She'd be proud that her death contributed to something that helps people." And he thanked me for it, but I had to thank him. He taught me how to channel pain into purpose. That is, without a doubt, the most valuable lesson I have ever learned in my entire life. After that conversation, we left the ranger station and stood outside in the gentle snow. The landscape was just peaceful white and quiet and beautiful. A year ago, that same scene would have filled me with fear, but now it just felt calm. Earl noticed it too. He said, "You're not afraid of the snow anymore." And I realized he was right. I said, "No. I respect it, but I'm not afraid." Fear often comes from ignorance, from not understanding something, and I wasn't ignorant anymore. He smiled and said, "Good. Respect without fear, that's wisdom." We said our goodbyes, promising to stay in touch. I watched him drive away in his semi, heading out onto the open road, and then I got in my car. I drove to the Jackson facility, the one we saved. I was ready to see the results of that choice, the choice to value people over pure profit. When I arrived, the Jackson facility looked different. The building itself was the same, but the whole atmosphere had been transformed. People were working with a sense of purpose, of efficiency. There was this incredible energy, this hope in the air. The desperation and fear that had been so thick during my first visit were completely gone. The facility manager, a man named Robert Chun, met me at the entrance. He had a huge smile on his face. "Miss Stratton, welcome back. The team is really excited to meet you." I told him I was just as excited to be there, to see all the changes in person. Robert led me on a tour. He showed me the updated equipment they invested in, the streamlined processes they had implemented, and all the safety improvements. It was incredible. He told me, "Productivity is up 18%. I was floored, and employee satisfaction scores have tripled. Our turnover rate has dropped to nearly 0. People actually want to work here now. And here's the best part. We're profitable. Not as much as a complete closure would have generated on a spreadsheet, but we are solidly, sustainably profitable." I couldn't believe it. "That's incredible, Robert. You've all done amazing work." He just shook his head and said, "We were motivated. You gave us a chance when everyone, including us, expected to be shut down." People don't forget that. They work harder when they know their employer actually values them as human beings. We eventually made our way to the break room, where all the employees were gathering for a scheduled hands meeting. I had asked to speak to everyone. As I stood before a crowd of 185 people, the workers whose jobs I had personally fought to survive looked out at their faces. And in that moment, the full weight of my old way of thinking hit me. If I had stuck with my original recommendation, if I hadn't learned that lesson about purpose, these people would all be unemployed right now. Their families would be struggling. This entire community would probably be devastated. I took a deep breath and began. "Thank you all for taking the time to meet with me today," I said. "A year ago, I visited this facility for the very first time. I was here to evaluate whether it should remain open. And my initial recommendation, was closure. A complete shutdown. 240 jobs eliminated and operations relocated to a more efficient facility. Thank you all for taking time to meet with me. A year ago, I visited this facility for the first time. I was here to evaluate whether it should remain open, and my initial recommendation was closure. Complete shutdown. 240 jobs eliminated. Relocation of operations to a more efficient facility. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew this story all too well, but something happened between that visit and my final recommendation. I had a near-death experience. I got caught in a blizzard and was rescued by someone I dismissed as irrelevant. But my job isn't just to maximize profit, it's to make decisions I can live with. So, I changed my recommendation. Instead of closure, I proposed restructuring, investing in this facility. modernizing operations while preserving as many jobs as possible. And you all made that work. The success of this facility isn't my achievement, it's yours. You proved that when companies invest in people, people deliver results. Applause filled the room. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to be better than I was, for showing me that business can be profitable and humane, and I want to make you a promise. As long as I have influence in this company, we will never close a facility without exhausting every alternative. We will never eliminate jobs without considering the human impact. We will be a company that values people, not just profits. More applause erupted. Several people were crying. It was a powerful moment, a culmination of a year of change, both for the company and for me. After the meeting, as people were mingling, a woman in her 50s approached me. "Miss Stratton," she began, her voice a little shaky. "I'm Linda Mitchell. I've worked here for 22 years. It's a pleasure to meet you, Linda," I said, shaking her hand. "When you visited a year ago," she continued, "I was terrified. I thought I was going to lose my job, my health insurance, everything. You see, I have a daughter with special needs losing. My job would have been devastating for our family. But you saved us. You gave us a future. I just wanted to say thank you." I couldn't help it. I pulled her into a hug. "You're welcome." Primera sighed softly. "And thank you for the work you do. This facility succeeds because of dedicated people like you." Linda pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You're different than most executives. You actually care." I managed a small, wry smile. "I didn't always, but I learned." Better late than never, right? After the formal event, I spent hours walking the facility floor. This wasn't a corporate tour. It was a personal journey. I wanted to talk to the workers, to understand their lives. I met Maria, a woman who'd been with the company for 15 years. With her salary, she was putting 3 kids through college. Her pride was palpable. She showed me pictures of her children, their bright, hopeful faces a testament to her hard work. Then I met James, a veteran who told me he had struggled with PTSD after his service. Finding stable employment here, he said, had been a lifeline. It gave him structure, a sense of purpose, and a community that understood. He wasn't just a number on a payroll. He was a hero finding his footing back home. And then there was Sarah, a single mother who had not only kept her job but had been promoted to supervisor during the restructuring. She spoke with confidence about the new processes, about her team's successes. She was a leader, her potential unlocked because the company chose to invest in her rather than discard her. Each person was a life, a story, a human being who mattered far beyond their contribution to the profit margins on a quarterly report. This was what I'd been missing for 20 years. The human dimension, the vibrant, complex reality behind the cold, hard numbers. I had spent my career in boardrooms, looking at data points, making decisions that affected thousands of lives without ever truly seeing them. Now, their faces were etched in my mind. Their stories were part of my story. That evening, I checked into a hotel in Jackson and made a call I'd been looking forward to all day. I called Earl. "How did it go?" he asked, his familiar, steady voice on the other end. Seeing the facility thriving, meeting the people whose jobs we saved. Earl, seeing the real impact of choosing humanity over pure efficiency. "I'm so glad I made that choice. So grateful you taught me to see beyond spreadsheets." "You taught yourself," he said humbly. "I just gave you a push." "You gave me more than a push," I insisted. "You gave me an example of how to live, how to honor tragedy, how to turn pain into purpose. I'm trying to do the same now. Use my privilege and my position to help instead of just to profit." There was a pause on the line. "That's good," Earl said, his voice thick with meaning. "That's what Beth would want. What I want, you're doing right by her memory." The mention of his late daughter, Beth, still brought a pang to my heart. "I hope so," I whispered. "I think about her often, about how young she was, how much potential she had, how her death was such a waste." "It was and it wasn't," Earl replied, his voice a mixture of sadness and strength. She died too young, yes, but her death taught me lessons I've used to save others. And through me, it taught you lessons you're now using to help thousands. That's legacy. That's meaning extracted from tragedy. His words struck a deep chord within me. Legacy. Meaning. It was what I was searching for. "Do you think she knows?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Wherever she is, do you think she sees what we're doing in her memory?" "I believe she does," Earl said with quiet certainty. "I'm not religious, but I believe people we love stay with us somehow. In memory, in lessons, in the choices we make because they mattered to us. Beth's alive in every person I help. And Diane? She's alive in every person you help. That's immortality." I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of profound understanding. "Thank you, Earl," I managed to say, "for everything. For Sabine, May, for teaching me. For being an example of what it means to be truly successful, not in wealth or status, but in impact and meaning." "You're welcome," he said warmly. "And Diane, be proud of yourself. You've come a long way. You're not the woman I met at that truck stop a year ago. You're better. And you're still growing. That's all any of us can do. Keep growing. Keep trying. Keep being better than we were." "I will," I promised, a newfound resolve strengthening my voice. "I promise." Hanging up the phone, I looked out the hotel window at the quiet town below. A year ago, I was lost in a blizzard, both literally and figuratively. I was a person defined by profits, power, and efficiency. Today, I stood here as someone else entirely. Someone who understood that the greatest returns aren't found on a balance sheet, but in the lives you touch, the hope you inspire, and the positive impact you leave behind. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I knew I was on the right path. Thank you for watching and sharing this journey with me. She hung up the phone, her conversation with the board over for now. Diane sat alone in her hotel room, the vast, rugged landscape of Wyoming stretching out before her. It was so beautiful, yet so dangerous. A perfect mirror, she thought, for the lesson she'd just learned. A lesson learned on the very edge of life and death. Just a short while ago, she'd been so close to dying. Freezing in a blizzard, lost and alone. So close to her life. Ending without ever having truly lived it, without ever really understanding what mattered most. But then, a miracle happened. She was given a second chance. And it came in the unlikely form of an old truck driver, a man named Earl. A man who chose to value a stranger's life over holding a grudge against the company she represented. A company that had, in a way, taken his own daughter from him. He honored his daughter, Beth, not with bitterness, but by helping others. He showed Diane what it truly meant to be successful, and it had nothing to do with stock prices or profit margins. With a newfound clarity, Diane opened her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she began to write. First, a letter to the board of directors. Then, a detailed proposal. She was expanding the Human Capital Preservation Initiative, making it a company-wide mandate. It was more than just a policy change. It was a new philosophy, a framework for making every single decision with humanity at its core. She knew it wouldn't be an easy sell. The resistance would be fierce. Some board members, the ones who only saw spreadsheets and bottom lines, would fight her every step of the way. They'd call her soft, emotional, and unrealistic. But for the first time in a long time, Diane didn't care what they thought. She had a mission now, a purpose that went far beyond profit. She finally understood the immense power she held in her position, and she was determined to use it for good, to help people, to make sure that other hardworking employees didn't lose their jobs, their livelihoods, their stability, just to satisfy a quarterly earnings report. She would fight to ensure that every corporate decision weighed the human impact right alongside the financial return. Was it a perfect plan? No. Was it going to single-handedly revolutionize the entire corporate world overnight? Probably not, but it was better. It was so much better than what came before. And right now, in this moment, better was enough. Because she had learned that perfection is a myth. It's an impossible standard that keeps us from taking the first step. But growth is always possible. Change is always possible. The journey of becoming a better version of yourself, that is something you can always strive for. Earl had proven that. The tragic loss of his daughter, Beth, could have completely destroyed him. It could have filled him with a rage that consumed everything. But instead, it transformed him. It forged him into someone who saves lives, who finds meaning in helping strangers stranded on a lonely road. And Diane's own brush with death, her own terrifying night in the storm, it could have just become a scary story she'd tell at dinner parties. A close call to be forgotten over time. But instead, it transformed her into someone who values people over profits. Someone who sees the faces and families behind the employee numbers. That, she realized, is what redemption looks like. It's not about erasing the past, but learning from it. It's about finding meaning in the pain and using it to build a better future. That was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Diane looked out the window one last time, at the mountains, standing strong against the sky. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, felt truly alive. The fight ahead would be long, but she was ready. She had found her purpose,